Have you ever stopped to think about who really holds the power in a society? Today, we're going to dive into a really powerful and, honestly, pretty controversial answer to that question. John Austin's theory of the sovereign.
It's a huge question, right? One that cuts through all the noise. Who is actually in charge? Well, way back in 1832, a jurist named John Austin came up with an answer that was kind of shockingly simple. He basically threw out everything we think about, morality, tradition, even divine right, and just boiled it all down to pure, raw power.
Okay, so this, right here, this is the absolute core of his whole theory. Forget elections, forget the will of the people for a second. Austin's formula is super straightforward. 1, you need a specific person or group at the very top who doesn't have to answer to anyone else. And 2, the rest of society just obeys them, like habitually, without question. If you've got that, congratulations, you found the sovereign.
So, what did this all-powerful figure actually look like? Well, Austin had a very specific checklist for what makes a true sovereign. So let's run through it and unpack this idea.
It all starts with what he called a determinate body. That means a specific person or a group you can literally point to, no vagueness. This body then gets that habitual obedience from the people, which in turn gives them absolute, totally unlimited power. Now, this power can't be divided or shared. It's indivisible. It's a one-stop shop. And according to Austin, these elements are absolutely essential. Without them, you don't even have a state.
And this quote, wow, this gets to his most radical point. For Austin, law has nothing, and I mean nothing, to do with justice or fairness or what's right. Law is simply a command from the top, and it's backed by the threat of punishment if you don't follow it. That's it. Full stop, end of story.
Now, I know this sounds pretty harsh, but people were actually drawn to this theory. You might be asking, why? Well, because it was so clear and logical. It treated law like a science, It just stripped away all the messy, subjective stuff. Let's take a look at why that was so appealing.
So the biggest selling point was this incredibly clean separation. Austin drew this hard line in the sand between what the law is and what we think it should be. In his world, law is just a practical system of commands and obedience. Morality? Well, that's your own private business. It's a matter for your conscience. And this brought a kind of stark, new clarity to legal thinking.
This also helped clarify where law actually comes from. See, Austin argued that true positive law, which is the only kind that really matters to him, comes directly from the sovereign. All those other things, like ancient customs that people follow just because, yeah, they might be influential, but they aren't law in his book because there's no clear commander issuing the order.
But, and you probably saw this coming, this theory starts to kind of fall apart when you hold it up to the messy reality of how states actually work. Critics, especially a group known as the pluralists, were really quick to point out some major holes in his logic.
The critiques really came from all sides. First, and this is the most obvious one, what about the power of the people? His model just has no room for popular will or political sovereignty. Critics also pointed out that, in the real world, no sovereign's power is ever truly absolute. They have to deal with customs, traditions, and, especially today, things like international law and treaties. His theory just ignores all these very real constraints.
And that really gets to the biggest problem with the whole idea, this concept of absolute power. I mean, in the real world, leaders just can't do whatever they want. They're hemmed in by public opinion, by powerful groups, by traditions. As one critic famously put it, even the most powerful leader eventually has to bend his knee before the popular view and wishes. Power is always way more complicated than a simple command.
So where does that leave us with John Austin? Well, his theory might be flawed, for sure, but its impact on legal thought is just undeniable. So let's try to weigh its contributions against its pretty serious limitations.
Okay, so here's the final balance sheet. On one hand, Austin's big contribution was giving us this clean, logical model that separates law from morality. It's simple. But on the other hand, it's a model that completely breaks down when you try to apply it to the real world of modern democracies, international law, and of course, the power of the people.
So at the end of the day, what's the big takeaway? Well, Austin's theory is a really vital piece of the puzzle of power. He perfectly described legal sovereignty, that single, final authority that makes the law. But he completely missed the other, equally important half of the story. All the political and popular forces that actually give that authority its power in the first place.
Which leaves us with a final question to chew on. In our super interconnected world of global treaties, human rights, and massive economic forces, can any leader, anywhere, truly be sovereign in that absolute way Austin imagined? It's a 19th century idea, clashing hard with a 21st century reality, and believe me, the answer is far from simple. Thanks for joining us.